Genesis House and the Friends in Recovery podcast are proud to bring you Answering the Call, the First Responder podcast. Join your hosts, Mike the Podfather and Jersey Ed, as they address the real issues in health and wellness for first responders. From physical and mental health to relationships and work-life balance, we leave no stone unturned. Answering the Call, the First Responder podcast is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube, as well as iHeartRadio. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, here are your friends in recovery answering the calls.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Answering the Call, the First Responders podcast. I am Mike Miles, the Podfather, and I'm here with my good friend and confidant,
Jersey Ed, guys.
Jersey Ed. Well, he's actually not here, and I'm not there.
We're not together.
We're in two different states.
Podfather, real quick. Was it the First Responders podcast, did you say, or did you say Friends in Recovery?
Well, I'm pretty sure I said this is Answering the Call, the First Responders podcast.
Okay. Well, we'll keep this in because this is good. This is good radio.
I might have said, I don't know.
Real quick, our guest
this is Answering the Call, the First Responders podcast.
There you go. We'll keep it going anyways. We can advertise our other show. So real quick, Podfather, John Bacigalupo, an EMT out of Minnesota and an alumni of Genesis House, is going to be our guest here in a couple minutes. But I just want to see how you're doing, Podfather. How was your week? How was everything? How you doing? You look good. You're fit. Or you're running marathons? What are you doing this week?
A very busy week. I actually, the recovery business is, it's going full tilt up here in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. I work in both states, close by. But really busy. I've gotten more calls from people, new clients, old clients. People relapsing, people needing to go away, people that don't want to go away. The business, this is a business you get in. You never know when you're going to get the phone calls, who's going to be calling, what the situation. A young girl goes out to California. She's doing crystal meth. Next thing you know, she's running around in her underwear. Some person, neighbor, just sees her, takes her in, has her call her mother. The neighbor actually speaks to the mother and says, "Hey, I got your daughter, who's an educated, beautiful young lady, who's very smart and very accomplished, and all of a sudden she's in some stranger's house in California in her underwear." I think of getting a call like that.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah.
Right? How would you sleep? So and then of course I get the call to see what I can do, and we all collaborate and try to help out. Yeah. But it's been a very, very, very busy.
And I'm sure it's been busy for the first responders out there too. And actually, we have John Bacigalupo. He's an EMT out of Minnesota. He's a first responder, obviously, and he can give us a little bit insight, maybe how the craziness is going. But I want to give you his bio real quick. John is married to his wife of 6 years, who is also an EMT. They have no kids, but they do have 2 furry babies. And we'll find out what those furry babies are in a minute. Since at the age of 18, John worked in many different areas of public safety and emergency services. He has been a licensed EMT for the last 15 years, working part-time and full-time in urban, suburban, and rural areas of 911 ambulances. John is a licensed EMT instructor and a 3 Echo active shooter instructor. He's also a field training officer and the overall department training officer. In the early 2000s, he worked part-time as an armed security officer in the worst parts of the greater metro area. In addition to that, he served with a small police department as a reserve police officer for several years, which was all volunteer work. After many years of repeated exposures to critical incident trauma, several close calls with life-threatening injuries, and struggles with alcoholism, and dual diagnosis and a diagnosis with PTSD, John had the opportunity to get a second chance in life at the Genesis House First Responders program. John is currently in recovery now, truly living his best life. Giving back to others is his life's passion. John, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Ed, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, that's quite a list there you got. The one thing that stood out to me, what is this active 3 Echo active shooter instructor?
Yeah, so Three Echo is a program that was kind of founded several years ago. It never made mainstream until just recently. After some of the more high profile shootings that the country's seen. So Three Echo stands for enter, evaluate, and evacuate. It's a methodology that we use to deal with an active shooter incident or an active assailant incident, whether it involves just guns or bombs. Just kind of depending on what happens, but it's just a way for us to more effectively treat victims and remove them if we need to. So,
interesting.
Yeah, no, it's a fascinating program, and it involves all facets and disciplines of public safety. Involves law enforcement, involves emergency medical services, EMS, involves fire service, involves dispatchers, involves everybody to have a smooth process for removing and treating victims and actually dealing with that threat, that person that made those choices to shoot everybody.
Yeah, geez, that's wow. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Podfather, this is your wheelhouse. That was just like Japanese to me. and I'm one of those guys that watch TV and like, oh my God, that's really cool. But I'm sure you understood what he was talking about, and I'm sure most of our listeners understood. And I understood too. But that's quite impressive, isn't it? As far as being, yeah,
absolutely. Well, I've been involved in shootings. I've never shot anyone, but I've been shot at, and I've had victims that have been shot. And I don't think what the public doesn't know. I know what the public doesn't know, what goes on behind the scenes. Actually, a lot of police officers might not even know what goes on behind the scenes unless you're involved in a shooting, And yeah, it's very interesting. Good.
What you said about being behind the scenes, it truly is. There's a vast number of people that have no idea how something like that is dealt with. They just see a little blurb on the news about it, or you get the 24/7 news coverage for 3-4 days after a big event like that, and they just kind of expect everything to be tied into this nice little bow. Well, there's hundreds of cogs and hundreds of people that need to be involved in that. And, first responders from every discipline. It doesn't just happen, and I wish the public knew that, but that's kind of the benefit of being the public is ignorance is bliss, I guess.
Yeah. and that's an interesting point, John. As a civilian, and everybody knows on the show that I am just a civilian. I used to run from you guys. And you never caught me, but I until I got sober and then I started working with everybody. But that is an interesting point because we see it on TV. We see, okay, well, this, that, and the other thing is going on. And like, oh my God, the SWAT team's there, this team's there, that team's there. And then 2 days later, you're on to the next thing, Mount St. Helen is erupting, and that's the next big deal. So, but you're right. The behind the scenes stuff is, kind of, the crazy stuff. So talk about that, John. Maybe the Podfather's having some technical issues, so he's going to have to do something technically to his computer real quick. So talk about behind the scenes stuff and the EMT stuff that goes on. You and I, in your bio, you said urban, suburban, and rural areas of 911 ambulances, and then you said some of the worst parts of the metro area. Now, I've been in Minnesota for years now. It's a beautiful state. Minneapolis, St. Paul, beautiful. I don't know of one bad area in the state. So, but fill me in a little bit about the bad areas. Fill me in a little bit about as far as, what you do as far as your job goes.
I'll touch on this. I'll touch on the security parts first. That's a shorter story. So Minnesota is a beautiful place. You're right about that. There's some places in the north side of Minneapolis that aren't so beautiful. There's a lot of great people that live up there, but it does have a pretty high crime rate. The metro itself is like any other big city. You got a lot of problems up there. You got a lot of people. So where you have more people, you're going to have more problems. That's what I'll kind of say about that.
Yes.
In the time I was doing that, everything that happened to say a metro police officer, we would get involved with as well at our apartment buildings and our different strip malls and things like that. And obviously the police would be the end game in dealing with those situations. But we were often the first people to be involved with everything from robbery, assaults, homelessness, people with warrants, people that were stealing, people that were under the influence of drugs or alcohol, that were acting strangely or out of control, things like that. I pointed my gun at people up there. I got into fights with people up in there. I got in foot chases with people up in there. And the overarching message that I got from the Metro is that when you have this much infrastructure, this much business, this many people in one spot, that you're certainly never going to be slow. And that's just kind of the way that the cookie crumbles up there. And I certainly enjoyed it, but it was incredibly dangerous on many fronts. And there's still a lot of people that do that for a living up there, and they're certainly unrecognized professionals for the most part. I remember one night my partner and I were working at a hotel, and we discovered a hotel room fire, just with smoke creeping out of the door. And we went ahead and made entry into the hotel room, which was actually locked with a little chain behind the door. So we ended up having to boot the door. And we found a guy unconscious in his bed who had drank 2 bottles of Jägermeister, and he fell asleep with a cigarette in his hand. Wow. So we yanked him out, pulled him out into the hallway. We had the hotel manager calling 911, et cetera, et cetera. Well, this guy had a couple of felony warrants. That's why he was staying at the hotel. Because hotels and gas stations are safe places. The police can't get you there, So we pulled him out in the hallway. He kind of regained consciousness a little bit. We had him, checked out by medical, and he ended up being arrested by that local police department for different things. But then the news story that came out later on that week was so-and-so police officers from this department rescue man from a hotel room fire. I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. Well, that's right. And we don't do that. We don't do this stuff for thanks at all. And just my partner and I just laughed about it. And we're like, that's okay. But that's the game. That's the game in security. A lot of people don't know or recognize.
They love the media.
No,
exactly. Yep. They love a good story, just not who did it.
Absolutely. Now that was a JW Marriott that you had to bust into, right? Was that what that was?
Oh yeah, no, only the 5-star hotel.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty woman stuff.
And plus, I mean, where you live and where you work, I mean, you've been very busy. You guys have been on the news lately more than most people in New York. So. What's the climate out there now? How is it?
Well, so kind of going on the EMS side, and that's where I spent the bulk of my career, no doubt. In Minnesota here, we're a hotspot for COVID. We're a hotspot for a lot of things. It's a very unusual climate up here in Minnesota. It's either, scalding hot, or it's bitterly cold, or you have all 5 seasons in 1 week. It's difficult to live.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's difficult to live up here. It certainly is a beautiful state, but what we're running into right now is, on top of all of the other things that we deal with on a normal day-to-day basis, from 911 calls, we're dealing with the coronavirus, and people have just lost their minds. Utterly and completely lost their minds. We don't know which way's up half the time. We're wearing masks constantly. The amount of PPE that we have to wear every single day is kind of obscene. I remember back when I started in EMS.
Yeah. That
when we had to wear a gown and the face shield and booties on a call, it was a huge deal.
Right.
We're exposed. We're exposed to like somebody with like active TB who's hacking in the back of the ambulance. Or like flesh-eating skin disease, and just all kinds of stuff.
Sure.
And now that type of PPE is just mainstay. It's just normal. It's what we wear on 90% of our calls.
Wow.
We have a screening process that we go through for patients, and if they have just this symptom, hey, guess what? You're putting on all your stuff.
Yeah, I would suggest 10 years from now, when they look back on this and they're doing studies and everything, they're going to say, well, if it wasn't an election year, that a lot of that wouldn't have happened. This is really, I guarantee it's going to happen, because this is just over the top. You cannot, and I live in a city now, Lowell, I live next to the city of Lowell, Massachusetts. And on my way to my office here in Chelmsford, Lowell just opened up Monday to start testing people again. We're a testing city, and there's a line that snakes around. That's why I was a little bit late getting here. Cars everywhere, probably a good 200 cars waiting in line. So yeah, you're right. It's a crazy atmosphere right now. That's
crazy. John, real quick, we're going to take a break here.
Yep.
After the break, I want to talk to you about your experience at Genesis House and a little bit more EMS stuff, and we'll go from there. But Podfather, you want to do the blessings?
I'll do the blessings. Answer the call, the first responders podcast, and we'll be right back.
You're first. First to respond. First to put others' lives before your own. And in an emergency, you need a network that puts you first, that connects you to technology, to each other, and to other agencies. Built with and for first responders. FirstNet, the only congressionally authorized wireless network for first responders. Because putting you first is our job.
Since 1992, Genesis House has been helping real people heal from addiction on their private recovery campus in beautiful Palm Beach County, Florida. Their family-owned program is accredited by the Joint Commission and offers detox and dual diagnosis treatment in a comfortable and confidential setting. At Genesis House, they focus on treating the underlying causes of addiction. Their comprehensive approach includes psychiatric care, individual and small group therapy, trauma healing techniques, and holistic care including yoga, massage, and animal-assisted therapy. After treatment, their clients enjoy the lifelong support of a nationwide network of Genesis House alumni. Call Genesis House today at 1-800-737-0933 to speak with someone who understands. Visit them on the web at www.genesishouse.net. It's time to start your journey to a long and successful recovery.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Answering the call, the First Responders podcast. I am the Podfather, Mike Miles.
Jersey Ed out here in the studio, wherever. Studio G, guys.
Studio G.
Yeah. And Podfather, you did say, answering the call this time. Definitely.
I know I did.
I know. You said it the first time, too.
I'm pretty sure I did.
We record back-to-back shows. So to me, sometimes it gets confusing. Podfather brings us in and takes us out. He does a good job of doing it all and keeping his shows separate. So
it is kind of multitasking, but you're doing a good job. You're hanging in there.
Thanks, Podfather. Podfather, yeah, a couple things. That break with FirstNet built by AT&T, that commercial is amazing. We really want to thank FirstNet built by AT&T for sponsoring us. They're a wonderful, they're a wonderful sponsor of ours. Also, real quick, I want to talk about copline.org. Copline.org is a helpline for police officers that can call 24/7 at 1-800-COP-LINE. That's 1-800-267-5463. And they're always available. There's over 100 police officers there. And I'm sure any first responder can reach out, and then they'll direct you where to go. But this is more geared towards the police, and over 100 volunteers that work for copline.org. They're there to answer any questions, whatever you need. So, and we're here with John Bacigalupo.
You got it.
You got it? You can say your last name. I want to hear you say it.
Bacigalupo.
No, he doesn't.
I got it. Us Italians have to stick together. You know what I mean?
Just say Buttafuoco.
Buttafuoco.
There you go.
I got nicknames all over the place.
That's right. While we were on the break, John was talking about FirstNet, built by AT&T. Yes. You use them, John, or you tell us a little bit about it, because they're our sponsor. It's always good to hear something.
We do use FirstNet. Yes, we use FirstNet, at least one of the departments that I'm with right now. We use it for our tablet inside of our ambulance, which provides, CAD updates and mapping and GPS, things like that. So it's been very reliable for us since we got it. We're definitely happy with it. And the whole idea is pretty fascinating, to be honest with you, because because like I remember when the 35W bridge collapsed, the first thing that went down in both in our sector and in the public sector was cell phones.
Right.
Couldn't call anybody, couldn't do anything. And having that system directly built for you that's not going to crash is of critical importance in any event. Period. Yeah. Not only for reaching out to our families to let them know that we're not going to be home, but also to communicate. Well, that's important, but to reach out to each other and kind of coordinate things. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I believe society. I mean, for my 35 years as a cop, 28 on the street, I know society. At least the society I dealt with, they're always expected to have communication, lights, heat. You'd never because you have very few incidents that cause a problem where you don't. But when you do have a major snowstorm and you lose power and heat and everything, what a rude awakening for people.
Oh, absolutely.
So, but just think about law enforcement, EMS, fire. When you have no ability to contact them when you're in need. I mean, that is just so horrific to even think about.
Yeah.
So that is really, really a great, unique, and great idea.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Guys, go back and listen to that commercial. All the first responders, talk to your bosses about it. Go get your first net built by AT&T phone. You guys can even go buy personal phones as long as you're a first responder. Podfather, you can get one. I didn't even know that until we had a little educational piece from them. So that's just amazing. The whole thing, and that's not what this show is about. But when you said you were, you did use the first net stuff, I always take the opportunity to see how everybody likes and so far so good. Nobody's really ever.
I think our listening audience for this show would definitely be interested anyway. I mean,
absolutely, 100%. Yeah.
100%.
So before the break, John, we were talking about your EMT stuff and your kind of a lot of stuff that's going on. Podfather, this is just as well as the PTSD, the long nights, the seeing stuff you shouldn't be seeing as a human being, doing things, being places you shouldn't be. And that all builds up. Those droplets keep building up into a bucket until that bucket overflows, either through substance abuse, through mental health. We call it PTSD. That's what we call it. And somehow there has to be an outlet. If you don't channel it right or fix it right. John, you ended up turning to alcohol, and you and I spoke in the past, and you got yourself some help down at Genesis House. And talk a little bit about that. Maybe it's building up to all that. And Podfather, if you need anything, chime in, please.
So I went to a seminar years ago. It was called Pain Behind the Badge. It was hosted by a former Vegas Metro cop and his wife. And the Pain Behind the Badge, basically he described his career as cop soup. And, you can make it into cop soup, EMT soup, fireman soup, dispatcher soup, doesn't really matter. Basically talked about, every incident that you respond to in your career, there's there's small chunks and there's big chunks. Small chunks, your everyday calls that you go to, that, are terrible for somebody else, but are part of your job, and you realize that, and they don't really bother you at the moment when you're dealing with them. And then those bigger chunks are, your shootings, your deaths, your big car crashes, things like that. And those end up being bigger chunks of soup that go into your pot. And he talked about the day that his pot boiled over. He was in his pool and he started crying for no reason. And he kind of realized that he had issues. And he was much along the same thought line that I had. When I started my career, I always said, if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen. This job's not for everybody. This is not for the faint of heart. I really honestly thought that a lot of that shell shock stuff and what we now recognize as to be, post-traumatic stress disorder was kind of some smoke and mirrors for a lot of people, and kind of an excuse for a lot of people.
Sure.
To either use drugs or abuse alcohol or miss work, et cetera, et cetera. And it was all fine and good. And it was all laughing matter until it wasn't anymore, until it affected me.
Right. Well, excuse me, a nice assessment. And I really think that, excuse me, a reason, or their reason, and I think the main reason a lot of police officers, people in EMS work, emergency services work, don't get help is because they don't want the stigma. They don't want people to think they're weak, or, they try to hide it. Substance abuse is well hidden in the very beginning, but after a while, it's as obvious as the plain as the nose in your face. And everybody around usually knows. Oh, so sorry. Everybody around usually knows you've got a problem before you even know you have a problem. So
well,
go ahead.
Our entire culture in emergency services is founded around drinking. It's founded around the brotherhood, that pat each other on the back, go have a couple of drinks after shift, go, drink about it, talk about it. You'll be fine. Pick up and move on. But when I couldn't pick up and move on anymore, and I couldn't stop drinking, just to shut those thoughts off, that's kind of when I knew I needed help. And unfortunately, in the system that exists today, there is a lot of stigma still. The military has gotten hundreds of $1,000s, probably more than that, and probably underestimating that, of money invested in research into post-traumatic stress disorder. And you think about a vet who gets to, and I'm not dissing our vets at all, not even close. You think about a vet that's deployed into a combat zone for 18 months, at a time. Think about somebody who is a cop or a EMS provider, a fireman, or a dispatcher who's deployed for a career of 30 years or greater, or 10, 15 years, 20 years, doesn't really matter. My point is that you kind of never really get to go home. And not only do I work in EMS for my full-time job, but I also volunteer in EMS in the community that I live. So there's a great deal of stress that my wife and I endure on a normal basis, both at home and abroad in our job. She's a 911 dispatcher for her full-time job. But my point is that it's hard to get away from. It's not a deployment where you go, you do and see some terrible shit, and then you come home. It's kind of just a revolving door. It just keeps happening. And that's kind of how I ended up in that position. I kind of I lost my work-life balance. I lost a lot of time to drinking. And I was definitely of the mindset that that's not me. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a junkie. I'm functioning. I've got a great job. I help people. I respond to emergencies. I'm part of society. I'm not part of that other section of society. It wasn't until I got to Genesis House when I started actually talking to people and realizing that there was a reason for what they were doing, just like there was a reason for what I was doing, that we all are human, and that I had been a judgmental prick for a great deal of my career.
And that's how we deal with things, I guess. And when we don't have things go our way, we can't understand how, why we're feeling like this. It comes out in different ways. And if that's the way it came out with you, a judgmental prick, that's how it happens. And I was that same person. I was that asshole all those years ago when I was drinking, and I don't want to say most of us are, but that is, a tendency that does happen when you can't figure out what's going on in life. You just get so frustrated and aggravated. And John, I like what you said about you don't get to go home. Talk a little bit about that. I determined that as you went there as a kid, you went, you were talking about the going into battle or whatever, and you come back, you're definitely a different human being. Is that what you meant by that?
Yeah. So what I mean by that is that not being able to go home is that, so I work 12-hour shifts. I work 12-hour rotations, usually 3 or 4 days in a row on a typical basis. And then when I'm not doing that, a lot of times I'm volunteering here on the local ambulance service at home with a pager on my hip. I'm at home, but I'm still responsible for that pager and radio when a call comes out. And that's by choice and by necessity. I'm not trying to be a martyr, not trying to say anything or attract sympathy or anything like that. That is, but it's a necessity in our community, and we chose to fill that. Mm-hmm. By not being able to go home, here's what I mean. So when you when I go to a call and somebody has a bad day at work, they say they're say they're an accountant. They go to work, their mainframe crashes, they lose a bunch of numbers, maybe not of any particular importance, and they got to redo something. And again, I'm not ragging on accountants or anything like that, but as the old saying goes, well, but did someone die? Well, no, of course not. It's not that bad, but when somebody asked me, but did someone die? Well, actually, yeah, somebody did die. A bad day at work for somebody in emergency services often involves death.
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead. It involves death. And then you kind of realize what real problems are in life. And unfortunately, when enough death happens, I kind of ended up feeling like a grief sponge. All that grief has to go somewhere. And I just accepted it into my own mind and my own body and my soul. And I started wearing those losses on my sleeve, and I couldn't figure out how to get rid of them. But I could shut them off. I could shut them off really easily by drinking.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And drinking didn't always work that way either. Sometimes it just made the voices louder. Sometimes it just made the scenes more vivid. And unfortunately, and by not being able to go home, I mean, it's like you're done with this deployment for your day, your 12-hour shift. You go home, you're reliving everything that happened, and you have no time to recover. You're going right back to work the next day. And the biggest lie that I was told from being a new EMT, 15 years ago, and when I was in class, is that that nobody ever taught me how to cope. They teach us all kinds of technical skill. They teach us how to start IVs. They teach us how to give medications. They teach us how to assess patients, how to extricate a victim from a car accident, how to respond to an active shooter. We learn all these technical skills, but nobody really ever told me how to cope. And we still don't do that. People don't understand that when you go to those deep, dark places in your mind, that you have to find a way out of them. And anybody who says that they're not affected by the work that they do is either lying or they're buttonless. I know I have a couple of partners that are buttonless, but I just hope that they make it to their end of their career like that.
Just give them time. So, and when I hear about defunding the police, I think about a situation like this where you're 100% right. I taught in academies for 17 years, and you know what? It was a very short hour. That's what it was. Maybe an hour and a half on stress and anxiety and what to do and where to go for help. And that. Listen, if society doesn't change and start taking a look at the real needs of professional people in law enforcement and EMS and fire and corrections, they're going to be losing out more than they are now. If they think they have problems now, let them continue trying to go in a direction where they think it's taking away money and giving less people positions like that. Because
and you're absolutely right, Mike. I couldn't have said it better myself. That whole defund the police movement. I mean, there's a part of me that says, you want to see a world without cops? Okay, you're not going to like it.
Yeah,
you're certainly not going to like it. But I understand the structural stress that we're all under. But I also understand that people often don't think about what we need as first responders until it's too late. They think about what they need at the moment they're calling, and we go there and we solve the problem, and we put on a cape, we go race into the scene, metaphorically, of course. I don't wear a cape anymore.
They told you to stop wearing it.
Yeah, it's got to be too cumbersome. But they don't give two hoots until they need us, for the most part. Again, we're not doing this for appreciation. I'm not doing it for a ticker tape rate. I'm not doing it for thank you. But until our society recognizes that first responders need professional mental health, professional substance help, and they need the same support that any other human being needs, we're in a great deal of trouble. Yeah, because we're not going to have a generation left to do this. There's more people that I know that have died from suicide than on the job. I can tell you that much. I can also tell you that it's hard to find experienced people to stay in this job because our burnout rate is so high. One of the biggest things I learned at Genesis House was how to cope correctly and not cope with the bottle. And talking to Phil, Phil makes my career sound like a child's playbook.
That makes both of us.
I've been through some shit, but Phil just makes I don't know, the guy's just incredible. But one thing Phil told me about is that he made sure I left there with is I don't have to take ownership for bad outcomes. And finding God and finding my own and reconnecting with God and myself, I was able to release those bad outcomes in my mind and not take them personally anymore. And it's made me a much more effective EMT and a husband and a friend since that time. And I recall a couple of conversations with Phil. We talked about losing people that we know at work to different things. And the specific instance that we talked about, I don't want to get into, but he said, remember the good times with that partner. Remember the fun that you had. Remember the good, keep the good memories, leave the day it happened, in your pocket.
Phil's a great therapist. He's unbelievable. He's helped so many first responders. Mike, some of the folks that you sent down there, along with John before him. We us at Genesis House, we were so fortunate to have such a great first responders, two great first responder therapists down there. And Phil is just kind of flowed right in with right after John left and took over. He's just amazing. So we're running out of time here, John, but thank you so much. One question that's been bothering me the whole time, not bothering me, but burning to ask what, I'm sure everybody wants to know this. So at the beginning, when I read you're married to a wife of 6 years and you have no kids, but two furry babies. What are the two furry babies that you have?
The two furry babies are two cats. I got a tabby and then I got a mix. They're one of them's a rescue and one of them, I'll tell you a funny story. So the first one we got from a friend of ours. She got out for a couple of days. She came back pregnant, and there was a litter of cats. And the second one was a rescue from a farm. When we got her, she was real sick. They're both girls. They both got a lot of personality. I'm the only dude living in this house right now between my wife and two female cats. So it's like an estrogen filled lynching mob when I do something wrong, But
God,
but they're great kitties. I'm really surprised they haven't walked past the camera and tried to show everybody their butt yet. So.
I'm sure. The cats are like that. But John Bacigalupo.
That's right.
Got it right. Thank you so much, John. And I'll be in Minnesota probably after all this stuff clears out. I'd love to get together, have some coffee with you, maybe hit a meeting.
No doubt.
Sit and talk a little bit. Thank you so much for being a guest with us, John. We really appreciate it.
Hey, John, thanks a lot. You had a lot of good information, and you definitely were a real asset. And it does this all the time. He sends me a bio a day before we do the show, and I read it real quick. But I got to tell you, one guest after the other, he just keeps getting these great guests like yourself, John. Thank you for your time and your service, and hopefully someday we'll get to meet.
Yeah,
hey, absolutely, Mike. I love your accents. I love everything about the East Coast accents too. So. Take care, guys.
Thanks, John.
Be safe. Stay safe.
John. So Podfather, he's unbelievable. He just, he hit some really good points too about PTSD, about the stuff that you guys see, the things that you go through. I mean, he's been there, done that.
Like he said, when you said you never go home, and I mean, I knew the analogy. I had a I imagine what he meant, and I thought he meant like you have it with you all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
I've sat across from war vets, young war vets, that have killed people because that's what they had to do. But when you think of that, just think of that for a moment. Just think you're 19, 20 years old, and all of a sudden you're in a war zone, and then 3 days into it, you're involved in a firefight, with weapons, and you take the lives of several people. Now, there were bad guys or good guys or whatever, but just the human body, the human nature, the human mind, the soul. We're not geared for that. We're not predators. We have to be trained to be predators. We have to be taught. And it's just unfortunate that they don't teach you how to unwind from that, how to deal with that, how to live with that. Yeah. Because I don't think there is. I mean, there's plenty of good, like Phil, like you said. Phil's a great a resource, but I really don't know if there's any training or course or something that can be taught to you to be able to deal with that in a rational manner and to carry on with your life.
Yeah. And you're right, Podfather. There's no training to basically unwind or to unsee things. There's no unseeing pills to take to unsee. A 19-year-old kid goes into battle. Right. He's 19, he's got told about everything that's going on, but he's there shooting the bad guy and he doesn't even know, this guy might, somebody you shoot might be the best guy in the world, but if somebody's out trying to take his life, he's going to do something. There's side effects to that. There's things that you're going to see. Same thing with you, Podfather, when you were on the streets and, you had God forbid you, thank God you never shot and killed anybody, but there were times I'm sure that gun was drawn and you came close to, taking somebody's life. Nobody's ready for that. Nobody, zero, unless like John said, you have no buttons or whatever he said. I mean, basically, unless you're callous and you don't give a shit, basically, Yeah,
but I think a lot of, and the worst critic I find is the person or people that will say, well, that's the job. Don't take the job if you don't want to do it. Well, if everyone had that approach to it or that insight into it, there'd be nobody here. There'd be nobody protecting us. But I really believe that going forward, hopefully going forward, I think next generation, not our generation, that's for sure. Yeah. I'm just hoping that EMS, police, corrections, vets, everybody involved, firefighters, everybody that's involved in that type of blue collar, hardworking, your life can be taken at any moment type of work, are protected and given more respect and understanding and maybe educated more if that's what they want to do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Never.
Real quick, I want to talk about that defunding, what he was talking about, and something popped into my mind, and Pop, tell me if this is a possibility. Defunding the police, that's the beginning. Okay, that's the beginning. When you defund the police, then the EMS, the firefighters, and every other arm of the first responders, it's gonna tax them even more. So they're gonna be out there more pushing the, next thing you know, we're gonna ask John to carry a gun when he's out there, kind of wild west stuff, because the police aren't around anymore.
What I want to know is if there's so many people that are racist out there, people like in law enforcement, well, who taught them to be racist? They most of them have education, so they went through at least 12, 14, 18 years of school. What about the people that were in charge of teaching them? Are they responsible for this alleged racism?
Yeah,
no, it's right. It's just crazy. No, they really.
Yeah, there's a lot of fingers to be pointed. Yeah, no, it does. No, and it does because, Podfather, you did it right all those years. You did what you had to do. You retired and you had a great career, but I don't know. We could go on forever on this topic. And John was an amazing guest.
Great guest.
Yeah.
Good job.
Podfather, that's about it for now. Do you want to do the honors to take us out?
Absolutely. For all our listeners out there, answering the call, the First Responders podcast. And stay safe,
everybody.